folks online, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Rocky, good morning to you. She's got some warranty stuff. Maybe she can pop in and ask about warranty stuff too, or we'll have another day to discuss all that stuff too. So, good morning to everyone in person. You've got some Steve. Good morning.
Morning.
Come on in, sir. Got some familiar faces around. It's good to see people coming in. Hey, we got any fun, exciting stuff happening? Purchase agreements, listings going crazy. Anybody got anything fun over the weekend?
Listing coming up on the east side of St. Paul next week.
Okay. Incoming soon status already, or just going to go live when you go live?
We go live Thursday.
Okay.
I got a bunch. Got 7 signers.
Okay. That's a fun one too. my record is 15.
Is that right?
Errors of errors. Yeah, it was a fun one. Yeah. I just did it. So I just had like the main executor signed on the purchase agreement, then I did an addendum and said all of these signatures are legally binding to the purchase agreement. And so there's no space to put 14, 15 names on the purchase agreement.
That worked out really well, except in this case, 2 sisters are, I don't understand.
Oh, yeah. Thankfully, they all met. They all came to the closing in person, signed. They were all happy with one another. It was incredible. So, got it done. That was a fun one. Anyone else online have anything fun happening over the weekend? Or crazy offer stories? One tip I had that I was thinking about, that I think there's going to be a lot of liability coming up for agents potentially if they got to be very careful on the conversations they're having with their buyers about waiving inspections. That's something that I hate to see. Now it's more common than not we're going to waive the inspection. What's the language and the conversations that the agents are having, and who's going to be at fault when they waive their inspection and close on the property and something catastrophic happens? I guarantee those agents are going to be having some fun. So a thought or suggestion I had was there's usually an offer deadline, right? So call your inspector beforehand, get the inspection scheduled for the day after final acceptance. So it's already, but then you can just do a 1-day inspection. The next day, it's already scheduled right after the deadline. So if your offer is accepted, you got it, and at least they have an inspection. They have some protection there. So just a quick suggestion I had there. Go ahead, Sharon.
Well, I'll just say that if you guys are not having an inspection done when you're representing a buyer, we have them sign that extra 4-year protection form.
Yeah.
So that is kind of a double protection. If they've read that whole thing, which they should have if they signed the bottom, it's really recommending that they do. So
yeah,
kind of protects a little bit, over and above just a decline on the PA.
Right. Well, it's the verbal discussions that those agents are having too, that there can be still some legal consequences. So as you're talking with your clients about how to win offers, ensure that you're saying the right things. You cannot recommend it, number one, and make sure that they understand that it's their right to have an inspection, and it is their decision only. So you can say others are doing this. It is completely up to you, though. And so we have a guest speaker, Jeff Zweifel with the Title Group, or the Title Group's attorney. So we're going to have some good conversations about dual agency, arbitration, then title commitment as well. So action-packed on that stuff. So let's get into that stuff very shortly here. We'll go over the main stuff and then get into the good topics. So license renewal is coming up. So if your license will be coming up in June, your March invoice will include the license renewal processing fee in addition to the regular monthly fee. This must be paid ASAP to ensure that your license will be renewed once your CE is compliant and submitted and you're all good there. MLS Access Dues for the second quarter are now due and payable by March 31st to avoid that late fee and possible MLS inactivation. Pay it now or set it up on auto pay, so it's nice and easy. I get the email every month or every quarter it's due that says you're 2 days away. So don't be me anymore. You got to set up on auto pay again. Reminder: check your mail files. We got tons of closings, and each closing with your commission check, you get a payday bar. So the drawer is getting a little full with a bunch of payday candy bars. So make sure to clean out your agent mail file as often as possible. TC service tutorial video. You can now find all TC transaction coordinator tutorials and services in the virtual toolbox on the same page as Suite Assist. Contact Kimberly again if you have any questions. Get your free consultation about what kind of that service looks like for you if you choose to use the transaction coordinator in-house. Again, great service. We're seeing good results. Agents are, who we had, John Garvin was one of our higher producing agents too. Came in, got to see him, and he said he's loving the service and the leverage that's allowing him to focus more on the sales versus the paperwork that agents are so good at doing. So keep on it. Next up, we're going to have Jerry come up, present company stats, and then we'll go over new listings and then get into the good stuff.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. Just making sure you guys are all awake. So far in the year, our website has had 12,500 visitors. Company sales stats so far this year, we've had 144 transactions for almost 39 million with an average sale price of $268. We have about 60 more transactions through the same time period over last year, so that's a good thing. We have 43 active listings, 42 pending listings, and 45 pending buyers right now.
59% up.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all.
No,
Good.
take it.
Yep.
And then now we got our new listings video.
Just to take. Got to hear the music. Oh, never mind. Well, not a whole lot of active stuff. Anyone, if you guys have upcoming listings, please unmute yourself now. We'll just give a quick little second for that. And then talk about buyer needs as well. Anyone in the crowd? Upcoming listings, Steve, you mentioned yours. Anyone else have buyer needs as well?
So me and Mary have a buyer that needs something between 225 and under in the far north metro, like all the way up to Mora, could go all the way up to Isle.
Okay.
222 we're looking for.
Okay.
If there's anything like that, we'd be happy to jump on it.
Cool. Someone online unmuted, want to chat?
Hey Joe, it's Tim. Got it coming soon in Ramsey, Sunfish Lake area. Went coming soon yesterday, going live on Thursday. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 385.
Cool. That'll be a nice one. Let's connect the buyer. Help some of us out. Anyone else got anything? Anyone else on the online? If you guys just want to put in the message in the comment box, by all means, do that as well. And then we'll have Mr. Justus Foss with Bell Bank come on up and give us some lender updates.
Not huge updates, other than it seems like things have kind of stabled out a little bit, at least this last week here with rates. So I know our log desk is kind of taking the stance where if rates get way worse in a day, we'll kind of hold steady. Then the next day, if they get way better, we'll hold steady. So they're trying to make our wave on our changes a little lighter than maybe what the going thing is. So if one day we see it really tank, hopefully we'll hold up. But then one day, if it really gets better, we'll probably stay pretty steady with that just to try to ride the wave a little bit better. But
Thanks.
no update yet on our 1% down program, so hopefully that will be coming in the week. We were told early March, so we're just waiting to hear about that.
Okay, cool. Anything else?
Questions?
Rates right around 3
Yeah.
currently still?
Yeah, right around 3.3125.
Okay, good. That's the standard.
Yeah.
Still record lows, no problem there. What I'm curious on though, like you said, is when they get up to 4 and 5, how long does it take for the inventory now to come down again for sales prices? What's any idea on that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here's an interesting stat I was looking on online yesterday, just about number of transactions, units sold across the nation on average from 2005 to 2020. So 2005 was the most at like 7.1 million. And then 2014 was the lowest at 4.1 million. So good 3 million, but overall, about 5.5 million homes sold per year, even in the worst of years, 2009, 10, 11, all of them. So it's cool for us as a brokerage, in my opinion, on kind of how I'm thinking about it, in that as prices come down, because of the model we have, flat fee, we don't care about overall commission price for the success of the brokerage. And as prices come down now, agents who have to pay those exorbitant fees at other brokerages now start to think about, let's come to a 100% brokerage model. And you can see on average, the same amount of transactions usually happen annually. So that was a cool little thought I had there on that. So next up, Wendy, you want to come on up and chat? Or we got Sarah, you guys want to come on up and then introduce Jeff?
Hello. Some of you may or may not have seen me in the office over the last, 7-8 months. But I've been at the title group for that long, and I will be working here full-time, Monday through Friday. I will not be here on Saturdays, I apologize.
You have a life.
Yes, I try. But yeah, I've been in the real estate industry for like 7 years, so it's a really exciting opportunity for me to take working with the title company. So I'm excited to be here. Come say hi. I love being around. So
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm always up there, as everybody knows that's in this office, I'm always up there.
go to your room.
Except Saturday and Sundays. Yes. And then from that, I'm just going to introduce Jeff, right? We're going right to Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff?
Get into the good stuff.
Exactly. I'm excited about him coming up. I want to hear what he has to say.
Excited to be here too.
Good. All right. Well, this is Jeff Zweifel. He, again, is our attorney at the title group.
We got the sheet with a bunch of questions too.
Okay, good.
Head on up.
You know what I think I'll do is I brought a sample title commitment. I don't know if we can hand some out. I don't know if Joe, if we can,
Yeah.
for the people online, if they can, if they can see it too. But
Sure.
So when we start talking about title commitments and so forth, I'm happy to talk about really anything that has to do with title insurance, title closings, real estate law. I don't mind any questions on those things. I did bring some business cards as well. If just a little background on me, should I look this way or? Yeah, okay. Little background on me, Jeff Zweifel. I'm the general counsel for the title group, with the title group for a little over a year now. I really have enjoyed I really enjoy my work with the title group, which I do all kinds of legal things for them. Risk analysis, answer questions from closers like Wendy and Sarah, and I help with all matters that are legal in nature. I've practiced law for almost 34 years. Worked in the real estate industry for title companies for the last 20 years. So I have a good understanding of residential real estate and how things work. Have worked for about 12 years negotiating short sales for sellers. Still doing some of that. Even though the market's so hot, I'm still seeing some short sales with properties where they are, where they haven't, the people have been in distress and haven't been able to do updates, upgrades, so forth. They're on forbearance. A lot of people are on forbearance for their mortgages. So if you see that, that's still out there. Just as a teaser, you might be able to pick up one or two more transactions with people that are in distress if you kind of talk about it, because people don't really. Short sales are 5 years in the past when they were really sort of prevalent, so people have pretty much forgot about them. Your spheres of influence might not even know that they still exist. So that's something to think about. I know you. Oh, did I? What did I do with your questions, Joe? I don't know whether I.
I got them.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're going to ask me them?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't know. Do you want to start out with the questions or about dual agency or arbitration? I've got some ideas on those, or then we can go to title commitments after that, or how do you feel about it? So, sure.
Can I just back up in reference to the short sales and some of the other things, and can you give us maybe your perspective on as we've seen double-digit appreciation and kind of where we're going, any speculation that you've seen? I always like to get other people's perspective of what's in the future.
Well, the funny thing is, I was listening very intently to what Joe was saying, because I'm trying to think, for our title office and our title company, as well as for just where this market's going. I think that it's like Joe was saying. I think the prices will have to correct somewhat, because I think I don't know that incomes are going up as fast as the prices, and I'm not sure how you advise someone about home inspections when that's sort of a bargaining chip not to do one. And I've heard of properties being sold sight on, or offers made sight unseen and everything. But I think there will be somewhat of a correction. I think there is. I don't have the stats, but there's literally millions of people on forbearance for their mortgages right now.
2.1 million.
2.1 million. And you figure that, unfortunately, a lot of those people, once you get behind, it's hard to, for people to catch up. What I've seen are a lot of people that are on forbearance that basically say they see the handwriting on the wall that they're not going to be able to, stay in this property, whether it's because of, illness or injury, retirement. There's a lot of reasons, and so a lot of these people were chronically sort of distressed, so they haven't made upgrades. They haven't kept up with, normal maintenance, and their homes aren't getting the prices that you're seeing with other properties. So, and then if they've not paid their mortgage for almost a year now, that's bringing any equity possibility they had. It's closing the gap. Also seeing people that filed bankruptcy didn't realize their second mortgage was still a lien. So then they think, well, I only paid my first mortgage and I haven't heard about my second mortgage for years. It's probably gone, but it's not. And then they find out they owe another 30, 40, 50,000 on the second mortgage. So you paid if you sell. It's not that they personally owe it, but it has to be paid if you sell.
Well, you can't take out like a line of credit or anything or refinance if you're in the forbearance period either. I don't believe so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so you have to, the rules right now are you have to at least make 3 consecutive months of payments in order to become current or come actual current. 3 consecutive payments, then you need to.
Okay, got it.
Good.
Quick kind of feedback off of Scott. I know because of, COVID, a lot of this foreclosures have been kind of on hold. I notice on the Anoka County Sheriff website, we have 31 completed sales. Pending sales are up to 31. They seem to be growing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that valve opening to your experience?
I think it is opening. I think that I was checking last summer and you couldn't even schedule a sheriff's sale in Anoka County, and now you can. They're holding them. There are still some moratoriums depending on the type of mortgage. So you're going to see some moratoriums. You're going to see that with the moratorium on evictions, that's slowing things down because people are still living in some of these properties, and that's making it difficult. Another thing is for title insurance. So if you have an investor buyer and they're buying an REO, there is very likely that they won't be able to be insured against redemption rights of the former owner. I mean, there are exceptions to it that you can kind of work around it, but it is interfering with being able to insure REO properties, at least against redemption rights, not against other things.
Even after it's gone through a full foreclosure?
Yeah, and the problem is that if the foreclosure started, if the foreclosure wasn't complete through redemption period and everything by March, I think it was 15 of 2020, it's in question. So all these foreclosures that were going on and hadn't completed by March 15th, 2020, and all the new ones, they're all at issue. There's an issue, and whether the former owner still has redemption rights or not, because I mean, we're in an unprecedented time. In 30 years, I've never seen anything like this where we don't know what the rules are going to be. I guess in a couple of days, we'll know if our state goes, if the peacetime emergency is extended or not. And, if then you can start evicting people and so forth, or if there'll be some phase in, who knows how they'll do that. And then if what the title insurers have said so far is that they're going to wait 60 days after the peacetime emergency is over. I'm not saying every title insurer, but the ones we're working with, before they're going to insure against redemption rights, because they want to make sure that these people had a chance to make a claim that they were, that they still have redemption rights or not. So we'll just have to wait and see some interesting things. So.
Any have like one of the forbearances or any indication of the emergency act that they're going to vote on that coming up? But what about forbearances? I know there's still, you can't evict.
You're right. And the forbearances on these mortgages, I think there was talk, and I'm not sure it went through, to extend that to this summer.
Does anybody know when the forbearance?
Yeah. It's going to
summer now extended.
I don't know if that went through, as Congress was working on the extent that extension of the CARES Act, I believe it is. So we'll have to see. I don't know that that's actually went through yet. So.
But that's going to have a big plan. What's going to happen in the future?
Yeah. Yep. Because just think if we have 2 million people that all of a sudden go off for forbearance and they aren't able yet to pay their mortgage. That's not good. It's not good. Yeah. So hopefully they'll figure out something. One way or another, I feel bad for landlords as well. And everybody's a victim at this point. So. All right. So I guess, did you want to start with questions, Joe?
Title commitment questions, and we'll get into arbitration and dual agency, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Sure.
First one, what do title commitments look for?
Well, what they look for is it really from our perspective as title officers. Like when Wendy, if she looks at a title commitment, she knows her job is to make sure that she closes the property in a manner that we can insure it. Okay. And so basically, this title commitment, think of it as kind of a cookbook for insuring the property. And so it gives us a lot of information about the property. I see that we have it up on the screen there. That's great. So if we see right there, we have Schedule A. And here I just over an overview of a title commitment. Schedule A basically tells us who is involved. So it tells us who is on number 2 there. It says who's going to be the owner of the new owner of the property, and how much are they going to, what are they paying for? What will we do owner's title insurance on? Who the lender will be is also there. Number 3 tells us what kind of interest they have in the property, and so forth. Fee simple just means they own it. They don't have, it's not a contract for deed. It's not, some other ownership, not a leasehold. Then we get the legal description. So we get, the basics are on Schedule A. So what I would say is that as agents, you don't expect you're going to know as much about title commitments as I do, working with them for 20 years. Wendy, how long have you worked with them?
Commitment?
Yeah, title.
25.
See, as young as Wendy is, but 25 years, so what you want to do as an agent is don't get overwhelmed by it. Just look at it to be able to ask questions, and you could always contact Wendy if she's your closer and ask her a question. I've got my cards here. I don't mind going over a question with any of you on a title commitment, even if it's in other companies. I don't mind. And my email address for the title group is jeff@thetitlegroupinc.com. So I don't mind. You send me a title commitment. We can talk it over quickly, any questions. But anyway, the first page, the Schedule A is who's involved. Now then the second page is just a signature. We go to the third page here. This is what we call, it says, you'll see it says, yep, right there, Schedule B, Part 1. But really think about it as the requirements, okay? What the requirements are things that Wendy has to do in order for it to be ready to close, or Wendy has to address. She might not have to do something, but she has to address it. And so we look at things like, on our title commitment now, we try to put the important things that closer and processor have to address right up front. So we see that we need a deed from the seller to the buyer, of course, and they have their names on there. So one thing you might think about if you're the agent, is the correct name of my buyer on there? Is the correct name of my seller on there? And then that's number 4. Number 5 shows a mortgage that has to be satisfied. Oh, we need a SAT for a mortgage. Number 6 has a SAT for a mortgage. So these are just basics. I would just, if I was you as an agent, I would just glance through this and just see if there's anything you have a question on. Okay, it's not out of the ordinary to pay off mortgages when we close. After that, it says, we'll go on to number 7. This one says, oh, this property is both abstract and torrents. So it's half of it is in one system and half of it is in another. Kind of an interesting thing. So Wendy knows there that she's going to have to record her documents in both systems in the county, not just abstract, not just torrents. So
We actually have a file right now that the people aren't entitled. They're trying to refinance.
yeah.
And they aren't entitled because they got recorded in abstract, and it was Torrance property. So the documents are recorded in abstract, but the certificate of title still says the prior owner
Yep.
as the owner.
So is title insurance, hopefully you bought it, and doesn't cover it?
We're getting it cleared up by the title company that recorded it in the wrong part, but yeah.
A lot of these things will be cleared just by, they don't rise to the level of having to make a title insurance claim.
Right.
These things, because Wendy tries to address these things without filing title insurance claims. She might go to the prayer title company and ask them, how they did it, or they might help clear it. We have all kinds of little tricks and ideas to solve these problems or address them. So basically, you might see it's on there. It might not be a 911 for you as the agent. You're just kind of seeing what's involved. But then we go over a couple more things. We talk about the real estate taxes and just some other basic information on this commitment. I see on number 8, though, right there, yeah, number 8. This was I kind of blanked out the names of everyone to protect the innocent, but no, but basically this was an LLC that was the seller and the buyer in here. But one thing is that Wendy would see is, oh, we had an LLC seller, so we have to have some LLC documents to prove that who has authority to sign for the LLC. You know, and that can happen with a lot of things. It could say it was in a probate. So then we need some probate documents to prove that the personal representative has authority to sell and that it's a valid probate. It could have been in a trust, and then it could say that on there. And then we know we need trust documents to prove who the trustee is, or if there's more than one, which do all of them have to sign, and these things. So these are things that Wendy looks at. You might see these things on there, and you don't have to know everything about how it would be solved, but you might pick up the phone and call one of us and say, hey, you know, are you going to be able to solve this? Is this okay? Will this delay my closing? Because I think from your point of view is whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, they trust you to get them through the transaction, you know, and you just want to be somewhat proactive about this. Usually, like I said, I don't think you need to know everything about a title commitment, but just to be able to kind of walk your way through what it all shows you, and then you could ask questions from there. Okay, so those are the requirements. So Wendy and her processor would work on addressing those issues. So now let's go to, we'll go past the requirements. It's up to what we would call the, I guess on here, I don't see a page number, but it says exceptions. Keep moving a couple pages there. And the exceptions page is pretty important for you as the agent as well. And I think I'll show you where to look on the exceptions page. Keep moving up there a little further. It's going to be, say, Schedule B Part 2 is right there. Okay, here's where the exception pages starts. And the reason why this is important is that this is going to tell you as the buyer's agent what the title company is not insuring. If it's an exception, they don't plan, the title company doesn't plan to insure your buyer for it. And here's what I get out of the real, you know, out of the general world. They think a title insurance pretty much insures you for everything, but it really doesn't. There's a, you know, it doesn't insure you for everything. It insures you for some important things, but it's always buyer beware with anything. And so what you can do as the agent is to make sure on this exceptions page that there's not something here that you really think your buyer should be insured for, you know, that says it's not insured for. And now here's the way to look at this. The first 1 through 6 on this exceptions page, of the 1 through 6 exceptions, that's boilerplate. It's on every, you know, basically on every title commitment. And these things are things so that's always going to be the same. You don't necessarily have to look at 1 through 6. Depending on the type of insurance, some of these are more important than not, but I don't think I want to get in the weeds on that. That's what you should call me about or call Wendy about. If you look at starting at 7, 8, and 9, they're just kind of, you know, those are kind of basic things like we're not going to insure somebody against that they didn't remove the garbage and there's a, you know, there's a lien at some point by the county for garbage removal. We're not going to insure them against real estate taxes, although Wendy's going to try to prorate them and make sure they're paid at closing, you know, but we're not going to insure that. Those are kind of basic things. Where you really want to look is when you get past those ones about taxes and special assessments and you get to the next page, okay? This is where there's going to be specific things that are not insured, okay? And if you look on this one, look at number 12, it says declaration of rent restrictions, okay? There's another one here that says mineral rights. These aren't too bad. In our world, we have some things that are sort of what you call permitted exceptions, things that even though they're on the title, they're not going to, they don't make the title bad or unmarketable. Like covenants and restrictions usually don't. Easements usually don't. Things like that don't. Where you can have a problem though is if you see these things on that really are on 11 to 17 on this one, there's only a few that really mean anything other than just the, you know, the sort of normal boilerplate things. What you could do is if you see something on here that you question, this is where you look. And then you might say, hey, Wendy, hey, Jeff, what's this? What is this? Should my buyer be concerned about this? The other thing is too is that if Wendy sees something that's really a significant problem, either on the requirements or on these exceptions, she's probably going to let you know because she may need your help to solve it. So there's that, but then there's also you looking, because here's a really good example that recently happened about where I really wish the buyer's agent would have said something, but they didn't. And we were only representing the seller on this one. It was a different title company that represented the buyer, but it was a property in the South Metro. It had a shared driveway. And whenever you have something like a shared driveway, shared septic, there's anything that is over, there's part of somebody's property, your fence is on their property, anything like that, that raises a red flag right there. Because sometimes title companies will provide insurance, but they'll have exceptions for things. Or they only care to an extent. And here's a very good example. Okay, we were representing the seller. There was a shared driveway, okay? And the driveway was really long. It came off the main road and then took an elbow turn, and it was at least a block or a block and a half long along the north-south boundary. Well, it was actually on the property, on our seller's property, along the north-south boundary, at least a block, and then it dead-ended in the next property to the north, and they were sharing this long driveway, okay? Well, it was listed in the records that there was this shared driveway, and it showed where it was, and it, so it was there. But what it didn't do is it had no agreement whatsoever as to who would plow it, who would maintain it, who was responsible for anything, who would resurface it or whatever. And it was almost entirely on our person's property, but the neighbor above gets to use it, okay? Well, it began going back and forth between the buyer and seller agent because they wanted to make sure it actually existed. And the title company called out shared driveway agreement. They said they wanted one. But then there was an interplay between the two agents, and our seller's agent didn't want to have to pay a lawyer $1,500 or so to write up an agreement. So he kind of our seller pushed back, and the buyer's title company says, well, there is a shared driveway. We see it. It's in the records. It is acceptable. But see, it being acceptable for insurance is different than being acceptable to this new buyer as to how they have to deal with this driveway from this point on, okay? So it was perfectly fine for the title company, perfectly fine for our seller because they weren't requiring an agreement on maintenance and use and snow plowing and whatever. But thinking about it from an agent's perspective, I don't know how much they, the agent looked into it, but think about this. The buyer still would have been better off than if the buyer's agent would have insisted on the agreement, because then they wouldn't have to pay for everything that has to do with that driveway. They bought the property, and the shared driveway is really a burden to them because the property owner to the north doesn't really have any responsibility to it other than they get to use it. So think about this is that when that came up, it could close, it could be insured, but the buyer really had a lot left on the table there. Once they got it, they probably weren't too happy when the neighbor was expecting them to make sure it was plowed, but they really didn't have any responsibility to do it, you know, or whatever. So think about those things. I mean, again, don't be overwhelmed by title commitments, but just because it'll close or just because it can be insured, that doesn't always mean it's in the best interest of your buyer to close or to not insist on something else that you think is more practical for them. So, all right, with that, Joe, I'll let you, fire
Any
away.
online questions real quick before we switch topics?
I just have one question about that. Do they, what about usage? Do they have, like, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, recorded to their deed that they could use it?
Oh, yeah.
Access the easement?
Oh, yeah, that
Easement
property
to
to
use?
the north had recorded access. They could
have
use it.
easement to use
Yep, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's an agreement.
for maintenance thereafter.
That's right, and you should always, it's always best to have things defined. The property owner to the north, defining it isn't as important to them because it's not on their property. But this property owner that was buying or getting sold, it was the whole length of their property, north to south, on their property, and so they had all that area that was really their responsibility to use, and basically their garage was way at the top end of it anyway. But still, then the neighbor was just another few, probably 20 feet onto their property. There's their garage or whatever. But so they had all the use and none of the responsibility.
So, I mean, how do you come to a solution on what's equitable?
Well, what I would have done what I would have done is if I was involved with the buyer, I would have said, buyer, I would have told them just what I told you. Here's the problem, that you've got this easement for shared driveway on your property, and the seller doesn't. I mean, your neighbor doesn't have any responsibility to
maintain up or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And what happened too is, and this one was kind of unique that really brought it to the fore, is that 30 years ago, the then owners of the two properties tried to do their own agreement, and they recorded something in the county, but they never put the legal description on it. So it was not valid. It was not valid, and so there was something there that tipped people off. But then as soon as the parties found out that, well, we don't really need to do anything and the title company will take it off of their commitment, they didn't do anything. And that really, I think, harms the buyer because he or she doesn't know those neighbors to the north. What if they don't get along? What if the neighbors to the north that originally are different now, different people than what did that agreement 30 years ago? They don't know.
But how do you impose on the previous owner, the neighbors that were using that? I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, how do you have that conversation with them to say, this is what we got to agree to, or we're going to 50-50 on maintenance or whatever? I mean, that becomes a pretty tough point. I guess your choice is don't buy the property.
Or you could negotiate a price reduction because now, let's say the buyer finds out it's an issue, or the buyer talks to the neighbor and they all agree, yeah, we should really have a shared driveway agreement. Now all of a sudden the new buyer has to pay the $1,500 or whatever it is, plus could require some surveying or whatnot, has to pay that to put the agreement in place when really it was the seller's problem, but the seller got away without correcting it before they left, you see?
Yeah.
So if I would have thought about the buyer, because I think about things like a lawyer, not out, but I would have thought maybe the buyer should have pushed back and says, no, we want an agreement. And
you go get it from your neighbor. Right?
Yeah, because you know the neighbor, we don't. Why don't you go talk to the neighbor? You guys are, and also, why should I have to pay for the agreement? Why don't you pay for it? Or give me a price reduction and then I'll pay, then I'll go do it, So
Or not.
They may not. I mean, it's not the worst case in the world, but it could be really bad if you get a neighbor that's really hostile and all of a sudden no one will agree, and then you want to sell the property. What happens then? When the buyer wants to sell, and maybe the neighbor won't agree, and the next people are more concerned about it, the next buyer. So all of a sudden the problem became theirs when it should have really been the seller's. You know, so there was probably a lot more that was going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about. Maybe they all decided this, and the seller says, "Why doing anything?" and the buyer says, "Well, I need this house," so they went along with it. Who knows? But I just wanted kind of a good example for you guys to, you know, to always still question, even if something can close, that it still is that the best for your buyer. So.
Online question?
Does the title insurance cover any issues that occur after the closing date?
It does not. The answer is it does not, but there are exceptions to everything. There's an enhanced policy that covers more after closing. Basically, title insurance goes back from the date of closing. Things that happen. So it goes back to things that were of record or that occurred before closing. If things occur after closing, like I put my fence on your property after closing, doesn't cover that. It's not the type of insurance like fire, home insurance, where if your house burns down, it covers it after. It would have to have been something that happened before. And it also covers against a lot of things that are mistakes, like an abstractor pulls the records for Wendy and they miss something. It was there. There was a mortgage there, but they missed it. People make mistakes. The examiner doesn't see it. The county didn't index the records correctly, so you couldn't even find it. Somebody forges a document and it's in the records. So there's a lot of, and then the really good thing about it is it also pays your attorney fees to fix all this stuff. So title insurance really has its place. It's a good thing, but it does have its limitations as well. So.
Not to get off in the weeds, but I've done a little research, but cryptocurrencies and storing title policies and deeds and everything in blockchain technology, have you done any research on that and played with that a little bit on where that could go?
You know, I haven't. That's interesting. I think the thing about blockchain and crypto things is that it's going to give us more security, right, which I think we should go that direction, because there's a lot of insecurity in our current system, and a lot of forgery and, foreign actors and so forth. But definitely, if you have a title policy, you need to save it, because that's part of making the claim, is having your policy. So you have to keep it in a safe place. And you don't get it till after closing, because they don't issue the policy until all the documents are recorded and everything. So it comes to you by mail usually after closing. So make sure you let your buyers know, be watching for that policy. It's not junk mail, even though it comes after closing, probably, a month or two later. So.
What about being able to shop for different, title insurance? And if you're closing with a company, they typically underwrite that or insure that.
Yeah.
Can you go outside and get a different policy?
It's going to be the company that you close with is going to be the one that insures it, because.
So they're insuring.
Yeah, so you got to kind of do the shopping before they close. Yeah, because part of them insuring it is that they get it closed, make sure it's done properly and recorded properly.
Right.
So they don't want to insure it if they haven't done the work. Yeah, but there is some differences. There's 4 major insurers in the country, and then there's a number of others that are they're all pretty good. They all use pretty much the same forms. But some agents have more risk tolerance for, some agents do a lot of REO transactions, and maybe they have more tolerance for that. Some do more new construction. But I think pretty much you can, if you ask, a lot of times if you ask, can we have this insured over, you ask Wendy that, or you ask me that, there are things we can do to help you, and we're willing to try.
Obviously, then it reflects premiums and rates. I mean, how do they, have you shopped and compared rates for what costs are for title insurance?
I haven't done a lot of comparing, but they are fairly close. It's not a significant cost really when you're thinking of the whole scheme of things of a purchase. But I think it's more that I would say that if I was buying title insurance, I would always buy either what they call the Eagle policy or the enhanced policy, the extended policy, because it does cover some things that even happen after closing, and it's only usually 10% more in the premium. And title insurance is only a one-time premium, so it protects you the entire time you own the property. So it's probably worth it. The enhanced coverage is not that much more, and it gives you some additional coverages.
Do you have any statistics on how many claims are actually made against title insurance policies?
I've heard in the past that there are claims on about 10%. About 10%. And I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
So not a lot.
Not a lot, no. But the problem is if you do have a claim, it's expensive to fix. As much as a lot of times there has to be, one of the main things that lawyers do are called quiet title actions, where there's some issue with a boundary line or ownership or something, and they have to go to court to let the judge decide that it's settled and make it go away. Those are on the low end, $3,000 to $5,000. So that the title insurance covers that. Do you? Yeah. I mean, and that's the good thing is it covers the insurance or the attorney fees, and that's just the low end, what things can cost. So, let alone if you actually had this as, you didn't own that, that the westerly 20 feet, it would indemnify you, it would pay you too if they couldn't fix it. It would indemnify you against loss as well, in addition to the legal costs. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had a seller, the previous owner, when she was the buyer, bought it. Previous seller, there was a death, wasn't recorded properly.
Mm-hmm.
So she sold the property now, bought a new home, and she got served with papers. And what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
That was a nice surprise.
Yeah, that's a nice surprise. And usually in that, it's not like she's going to have to hire a lawyer and defend in court. Usually,
no title.
But still, the title insurance is doing it. It's clearing up the issue there, and yeah. So the people that have to use it, their title insurance policy, they're glad they have it. And the other thing it does help you too is that sometimes if you have a policy, then the companies will let you close on things or they'll insure over things. So it smoothens out the rough edges too sometimes, as well as if you don't have title insurance, then the insurance companies won't sort of facilitate things for you. So if you know what I mean. And when you have a closing where an issue comes up and all of a sudden everybody's talking to, well, do they have title insurance? They talk to the underwriters and they say, all right, we'll let you close that. You don't get that kind of help if you don't have title insurance. So, yeah.
We'll switch up dual agency.
Okay.
Want to chat about that?
Sure.
Big one right now.
That's a big one.
A lot of buyers think they can get a better deal, or they think they'll have a better chance if they just go directly to the listing agent to get their offer accepted.
Mm-hmm.
My take on it, and I bring this up at my listing appointments, is that if I have a buyer that's unrepresented, what I do is I pass it along to another agent at my brokerage to handle the transaction, because I firmly believe there's no way that I can have your best interest in mind. Dual agency to me just doesn't work. So I say I have to refer to another agent so I can have your best interest in mind at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's again, we want to have an open debate or discussion about it on different viewpoints on whether you're for it or against it. I mean, there's several states that it's illegal to do.
Right. Well, and I don't want to say I'm an expert on exactly on how agents handle that, but I will say that is coming from a lawyer's perspective. I'll just tell you what I think the risks are, and that is that they don't allow lawyers to do dual agency. You can only, if you have adverse parties, you can only represent one or the other because of all the things you just said, Joe. And so think about this: if you get into a dispute with one of the parties, because it's hard to serve two masters, the judges and the courts don't really think, they don't understand dual agency really, because lawyers are not allowed to do that. So and then you're the professional in there. So when things go to court, professionals usually are, justice is supposed to be blind, but if you've got a consumer here, and you've got a professional, who gets the benefit of the doubt? Yeah, exactly. Or if it's the regulator, like the Department of Commerce, I mean, they're pretty fair, but on the other hand, they're fair, but on the other hand, if consumer is really harmed, they're going to resolve it, that to protect consumers as well, because we're the wolves, we're the professionals. So I would say if you take dual agencies, you really have to examine the parties and the situation. How likely will this situation turn into a problem? We've all dealt with a lot of people in the public. There are certain people that, because of your personality and theirs, it might not click. You probably don't want to have them in a dual agency. And I don't know what your E&O carrier says, but they a lot of times will weigh in on that. I like the idea of having another agent in the office. The other thing is there's a lot of unforeseen things. Even if you do your best due diligence to think that this is going to be one you can do the dual agency, there's twists and turns that might come up, and all of a sudden once you're in it, it's hard to get out of it. And then you might you might have to step out completely and then lose commission entirely. So I don't know, somebody told me this old saying, but they said, it was probably in farm country. I grew up in Marshall, Minnesota, but they said, pigs get fed and hogs get butchered. So sometimes you got to be careful.
Would you guys elaborate a little bit more on the negativity of dual agency? What's blown up?
There's just no good. So I did one last year, and it was, as you said, Jeff, I had, one was a past client of mine and a good friend. Their friend found a home that was going to be listed. And so I said, perfect, they can have their agent, all is good. And then that seller called me and said, we haven't signed anything. We've had a few agents over, haven't decided. Would you be willing to take this on for a reduced fee? Sure, let's talk about it. Called my buyer, told them, I said, guys, you're my friends. Obviously, there's a conflict of interest right there alone, you're a past client. These people are okay with that, and I told them the legalities and kind of the complications. So I called the seller, and I said, talked to the buyer, said, only if you want this, will I do it? They said, yep, we're fine, we trust you. And then I called the seller, said, this is what we can do. You've had 3 other agents out here to look at it, so you know the value. I'm going to do a market analysis. I'm going to give it to both buyer and seller. So you guys have to say, so I'm not giving one insider information on the value. So They both got the same market analysis to review.
Right.
And then I drafted the offer for them. And it was fine. No issues. They were both happy. Seller saved some money. Buyer got the home they wanted. All worked out. But I've had other issues and just concerns where I completely say, nope, not interested. I'm done.
Yep.
Well, I'm considering moving my business north.
Okay.
All right. And all the realtors up there, they pay out a lousy buyer's rep. All right. But they do a ton of advertising for their listings. They get a lot of calls on those listings. Why would I turn that over to another agent?
Well, and that's, again, I see your point, and different communities are, when there's only 2 agents, 3 agents in town.
But if there's a huge objection to dual agency, it should be, and it's decided that it should be no different in northern Minnesota than in cities.
I think the legalities are the same. I mean, the same risks are there. But I just think that if you're in the metro area, you've got to look at what are the expectations of your customers, okay? The expectation up there might be that agents handle everything all the time, where the expectation here, and a lot of, talking around the coffee table, there's all kinds of attorneys like me around. So you mean Joe was the friend of the other people, and he wrote up the market analysis, and now you find that you feel like that was low? Oh, and he was a friend and past. See how it could,
Yep.
you know, it just, people around here, I think it's the commute. Go ahead, sir.
How does that hold water? I mean, everybody can find a Zillow these days. You can get
All it takes is for them to feel like they were misrepresented.
I agree, it's kind
all
of,
the proper sign paperwork, and as far as the communities being different and different. Well, if I mean, 90% of the buyers are Twin City people. They're not from the community up there.
yeah,
All right,
Yeah.
so it's based on what you guys are telling me and how negative this is, right? It's a stupid idea to move my business up north.
well, I don't know if it's, I don't know about that. I think that up north, and I don't know. Now I'm really speculating, but as more Twin City people buy things up north, it might change up north. Because it used to be, you know, the way things change over time in places, I think that, you know, if it's recreational property up north and you have more Twin City buyers and sellers, I guess I would assess more risk to those than I would your normal single family properties that are non-recreational up north. Maybe, you know, I would assess as a lawyer, I'm assessing risk factors to every aspect of something and then trying to determine if you know, is the risk too high? You know, you guys probably pretty much do the same thing.
That's how I would look at it too. Steve. It's just different markets in my opinion. They're more apt to do that, you know, rural, they did a handshake and I was fine with that.
They're still gonna be the same.
They are, but are they going to come? Is someone going to complain? That's the question. Is someone going to complain? Because once they complain, then the problems are always the same analysis, but it's more the risk of will someone complain about it? And I think that I'm a Metro person, but I think Metro people might complain more, maybe. And I'm not saying that's bad. Rural people might not, but you know, we all make judgments about things. That's just risk assessments that I would make. So,
Joe, can I ask in that last example, you would dual agent, right?
Yep.
Dual agency.
Yep.
Okay. Can we talk about facilitator, agency, who you cover? I mean, a lot of times when you're already working with a buyer and you find a house and somebody wants to sell it and say, hey, I want a discount, can you represent both of us? And you're obviously, if you've got the buyer under contract, you're gonna have to.
You can't represent one, be a facilitator for the other.
Right, so that's what I want to talk about, just facilitation.
So how I put in the offer in that situation is that in the offer, I say seller understands that seller is representing themselves. Still give them an agency form, so they've been presented that, so they see the types of representation that they have. But then I make sure that's crystal clear in the first agreement that they are representing themselves. I represent the buyers.
You're getting paid from the buyer?
From the seller, that was still.
Can you do that?
It's showing compensation.
Yeah, on compensation.
You don't represent them, but you're getting paid from them.
But, and that's a whole other deal that's coming to light at the national level now on how.
I didn't think you could do that. I guess I'm questioning that.
Well, Scott, that showing in compensation agreement says clearly, I think it's in uppercase and bold, they are not being represented, but you have the compensation listed on it.
Yep.
That
That
they'll
the
pay
seller
you,
is
but you're
gonna
not,
pay.
Yep.
you're not represented.
I put in the offer what compensation
Well,
was.
look at that form.
You have to put in the buyer's name and who you represent.
They used to have a one-time, showing.
It's not in there anymore.
Right.
It's
But
not-
it's changed to the compensation.
Showing the compensation agreement.
Yeah.
I have an idea for all you guys on this that might help you. If you see a risky transaction, or you're going to do a compensation agreement like that, or you're up north, sir, and you might do more dual agencies. One way to eliminate your liability usually is if you suggest that one of the parties are represented by a lawyer. Because if they're represented by a lawyer, then they're not going to be the burden's not on all of you to be all things to all people. That's the problem. And so a lot of times that's almost like it helps you more than hurts you. You know, that they sought legal advice and they signed this compensation agreement. Well, it's hard for them to complain. Yes, sir.
So is there any chance it's gonna be cut and dry? Because right now, we're sitting in a situation, dual agency is something that you don't wanna do in the Twin Cities, but you may wanna do it up here. And it might be good in this instance, and it might not be good in that instance. It's legally okay, you got all the paperwork to sign, what the hell's the deal?
That's why we're having a good debate, because it's, again, other states, it's illegal, flat out illegal.
There's more, I think, more states in the union that don't allow dual agency than do. I think and they've talked about it for many years, and I haven't researched it recently, but I'm surprised it hasn't gone away.
Well, one other thing too, is that
they haven't done away.
You refer it to another agent at your brokerage, you can still collect a referral fee from that other agent.
Still dual
So you can
agency.
still take,
Still under your roof.
still dual agency.
Problem's gonna come up,
But it's different, like Wisconsin, it's very outlined. It's dual agency, same agent, or dual agency with separate representation within the brokerage. Wisconsin is way easier to interpret.
Well,
Dual
it's the same
agency.
thing here, though. That's the same thing.
Right, but it discloses it better on the forms in Wisconsin.
I think it's a matter of risk tolerance. You know, I'm not saying don't do a dual agency in the metro area. I'm just saying I would assign a higher risk to it. It's just like some people.
I think there's no matter what. I don't
Yeah.
mean to interrupt. I think it's across the board, Steve. I don't know that it's regional or area. I mean, it depends on the people you're dealing with and how the transaction goes. I mean, but anytime you expose yourself dually, you have double the exposure, and then my estimation, dual agency is not we should just, it should be done away with. It really shouldn't be. I mean, think about it. When you go to court, like you said, lawyers you can't, plaintiff and defendant, you can't defend them. It just doesn't work. How do you go, and then the only thing we have is what, confidentiality, right? And what else? Confidentiality. I mean, it's for facilitation, but I don't know.
I should just shut up.
No.
Dual agency, okay?
It's legal.
The way I was brought into the real estate business is you shoot for that. All right, I got a listing coming up on Thursday in the east side of St. Paul. I'm gonna do coming soon Monday, going live Thursday, and your coming soon sign out front. Hope to build up a pile of interest in the product, all right? And by chance, get a call on my sign. All right, dial in all of the paperwork in the file of that market analysis for the sale price, all right? Here's market analysis for the purchase price. You guys make up your mind. I'm giving the seller a break because I get both sides. I tell that to both parties.
Variable listing, yeah.
You got it.
So here's one question. You give the seller preferential treatment on a lower fee, lower commission. So now the buyer can say that, well, shouldn't that be reduced on the purchase price then too?
Sure.
Because now I'm not getting the best interest in my mind.
So how do you answer the question of half the people I talk to go, why should I use an agent? I just call a listing agent.
Right.
Or give them a discount.
Right.
So it's the same principle.
Yeah, it is the same principle, but it's just like how many people know how to work on their own vehicle. I mean, I see, that's where I get all my business, is people thinking that they can do these things on themselves without agents or without their own and here's what I'll say about your scenario that I'm thinking risks always when I say this. Okay, so we've got this super hot market where buyers are desperate to get these properties. Okay, so let's say you write that dual agency, and for some reason your seller backs out. It wasn't even your fault, but this buyer lost that home, and then somebody, like a lawyer like me, tells them, well, you see, I had a dual agency and it was a sell, and oh, you mean the dual agent didn't do this, or this, and maybe you don't even have to do those things, but they were somehow got this expectation and they lost the property, you see. So who are they going to criticize and complain against? They can't, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's why I would assess the risk that you could do it, but there's a risk to everything, you know? And so if you and your broker, if you and Joe agree that that is a reasonable risk to take, that's fine. But on the other hand, it could lead to more problems than if they have their own agent. And then you're not, you know, if it falls through for some reason, they can't criticize you as easily. So
Here's the other thing, you go back and read cooperation, how we, code of conduct and how we conduct our business. And what I mean by cooperation of other brokers is, you know, if you go out, you know, are not using to advertise or publicize, like, hey, I want to honor, right? But who do you publicize that with? Well, I'm not saying you, but I mean, if you know, you just said, you don't, you absolutely don't. But if it ever comes out that you're, you know, hey, I'm going to do a honor, you know, versus cooperation, it just, dual agency, in my opinion, opens you up for so many different perspectives, there's so many attacks that it's almost, it's, I don't know. How many, well, here's the other thing, how often does it happen?
That's what I know, this time.
Well, it's probably good that it does. Good that it does.
But I'm just dealing with, as I mentioned, sir, I'm looking at moving my business to an area where it's a common fact.
Yep.
All right. And matter of fact, the other realtors up there doing, you know, I wouldn't change brokerages up there because an agent for a broker up there, by the time they get their commission check, everybody's taking a whittle out of it from the brokerages, all right? And that's the reason they advertise in these small magazines and everything else. They also, that's why it's floor time at one of those brokerages is beneficial because you get a lot of calls.
Yep.
And the last thing you want to do after spending the money and then fighting somebody for the listing is give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me.
Well, and that's
Especially
why.
if there's all the paperwork that you signed according to the state laws and the Department of Commerce. And I don't mean to be edgy about this, but it's kind of like, how much of it is other realtors being jealous and getting hired?
Yeah, and you know, that's the community up there. They all do, you know, they're all comfortable with it and people have the expectation there's maybe only one agent. Where down here, it's a little different, maybe. And so I wouldn't discourage you from doing it, but I think I would just go in with your eyes wide open that there can still be a problem.
Where I see a problem and where I see a lot of things happening is the scenario that I just said about the coming soon on Monday, going live Thursday. The agent takes an offer on his own offer on Wednesday, and none of that happens. Well, then I can see
Yep.
And that's a principle that a lot of brokers, I think, use today.
Well, and the bad part is that you usually don't find out that there's a problem when it's all going on. Everybody's just doing something. It's afterwards, and in hindsight, that the courts make a decision, or people complain, or the regulator changes or they decide we're going to enforce against this because we're seeing an abuse here. And it happens a year or so later. You know, so everybody's doing something. That's why you want to. That's why I always try to assess the risk ahead of time, and then you try to decide, well, you know, this could be decided as not appropriate, and they don't necessarily retroactive it and say, okay, you could do it all you want, you know, from March 9th back, but from March 9th forward, you can't do it anymore. So, you know, sometimes it's just they just look back and say that was bad back then, you should have known it, and I'm not. You know, blaming anybody, the courts or regulators or anything. They're just trying to do their job too. So
and I can kind of relate it to the fact that, you know, Scott goes out and buys a brand new truck for X amount of dollars, and then 2 months later you find out that you can buy that same truck for X amount less.
Yeah.
And you go back to the dealership and say, hey, what's the deal here? You represented this, and I represented it again. Mm-hmm. Why did I pay more than these guys can pay today?
Right.
And where's that going to get you? Should have been here today, not back then.
Right. Well, they do. I know car dealerships have licenses too, but you guys all have a professional license that you have as a privilege. So, you know, they can go back and they can. There's a certain expectations they have in how you do things. So, just like lawyers, I mean, they can go back and criticize us for things. that you can't just say retail and so forth, so, yeah. But
Good talk. Anyone have anything online? Skip arbitration for today, probably. That was a good debate on dual agency.
that was good, that was good. All right, well,
Look at it like if we're talking metro versus north. You look and just relate it back to masks.
yeah,
Down here, everyone's wearing them. You go up north, not even the restaurant owners or the employees are wearing up north. It's just
right.
it's a different feel up there. They don't want to be they don't want the same regulations as the metro. They just don't. And that's why I think it's more acceptable up there, that there's less risk.
Could be my background too, because if I got the opportunity to make this much, or I got the opportunity to make half of that much, I'm sorry, I go for this much.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Right.
The most American.
Do that. I mean, that's why we have dual agency. We tell people that they shouldn't do it, but I can guarantee you they're not gonna give it to another agent in the company because of that point. They wanna make more money. You know, you just have to be careful and, you know.
It's all on everyone's own risk.
Right.
It sure is.
This past year, was pretty substantial, and it was dual agency. I had to listen, the buyer came, and he had a very good friend, if I said the agent's name, we all know him, and didn't use him, and he wanted to use me, and I was very, very cautious in doing it, but it was substantial. The commission was, in my opinion, and I think most people would agree. But
You're
it
easy target.
became to be dual agency, and now as we sit here and have that conversation, I know how I conduct my business, and I do try and be very, very analytical and don't, dot my I's, cross my T's, but it doesn't mean that, as we sit here today, that's, I hear some things that are coming, that not 100%, this buyer not 100% happy with, the outcome or what he, and who knows, I don't know. It could happen, so that risk is out there.
Now they feel bad after.
Right, and somebody, if another agent would have been in there and represented him, well, that's, then I've got some share in the earnest of what happened and whatever. Even though I document and I have, but, you gotta defend yourself, right? And there's a sort of, I got special risk versus reward, but each one of us has an independent, we get, and it is legal, 100% legal, but you have to, risk versus reward.
It is actually kind of cool that we're not so regulated that we have no discretion. So, I mean, people can take different risks. Some people, I think that's kind of a good thing.
And I had that conversation with that buyer many times. You sure you don't want another agent? I had him sign to it. And nope, I want you to represent me. I have emails. I want you to represent me. I said, I already represent the seller. I can't go back on that. We have to, either it's dual agency, or you need to find another agent, period. It's like, that's the only way we can do this, because I already represent the seller. So.
Yep. We'll end it. All good. Jeff, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's fun.